speech is going to be by someone many of you have known quite a bit. I only had the honor of meeting her this particular meeting, but before I actually met her, I kept hearing words like courageous and really great, and some wonderful books, and it kept going and going. I said, I think I want to meet this person, so I made a point of doing it. And now we have a chance to have her present some of her latest things. I think it will be very good. Our speaker now is going to be Jeane Manning. Miss Manning is a freelance journalist who has travel studied, attended energy-related conferences, and interviewed countless researchers in North America and Europe. And as Joe made the point out, then she goes home, gets a job, works for a while, and then goes back and does what she wants to do again. So she has a degree in sociology, and she's the co-author of Suppressed Inventions and Other Discoveries, The Granite Man and the Butterfly. I love some of these titles. The David Hamill Story, and Angels Don't Play This Harp. I think we've just sold out all of the Angels Don't Play This Harp book, so it gives you some idea of her popularity. The Angels Don't Play This Harp, by the way, also includes Advances in Technology. She's currently prepared to publish The Coming Energy Revolution this spring, which I understand is like May. In May. So, that's only 4 days away, so we're in good shape. I think you should all give her a nice round of applause. Jeane Manning.
I want to thank the IANS for inviting me here, and thank you all for coming here. I hope we can all just kind of relax and have a bit of a good time, because it's been a long weekend of excellent presentations, and it's really not much more to say about the coming energy revolution, because we had people like Jeane Manning and all the other speakers that have covered it so well. So I'm hoping that before this 40 minutes is over, that I can get some of you to come up here and add your thoughts on the coming energy revolution, because there are some people here who have a lot of depth of thinking that haven't had the microphone yet this week. I wanted to start off with some sort of a humorous story to get us relaxed, but I tried looking through a joke book, and have you ever looked in the index of a joke book under energy generation and distribution? Isn't there? So maybe if anybody here has got a good free energy joke or something, you can jump in on the discussion time. The Coming Energy Revolution, the book, is coming out in a few weeks, and Avery of New York is publishing it, so it'll be available through bookstores, computers, and that won't be hard to find. It's an introductory book, not an encyclopedic list of all the inventors. Unfortunately, there's so many heroes in this field that I wasn't able to include, but my editor, and rightly, brought me down to, let's introduce the general public to this topic. So it'll be a book that you can hand to your business associates or family members to explain why we're so obsessed about this exciting field. And it is the most exciting field on the planet to be in. And I think that our family members, once they get a chance to see the scope of the history, it's a field with a history and a very exciting present and an even more exciting future. So it'll be written at the level of where I was at when I came into this about 15 years ago, and I didn't know, Delta T, what's that, a fraternity or sorority, and cavitation that takes you to the dentist's office. Worse yet, scalar, quality of reptiles or fish, or, I really hadn't gotten onto the terminology. But that's okay, because it was a little hard sometimes being a woman in a crowd of engineers, and it's all male crowd, and I stuck out like a sore thumb, even when I wasn't wearing bright pink. I'm used to being in the back of the room and taking notes and camera and tape recorders, so I'm not really used to this. But anyway, I found that it was an asset to be able to continue to ask dumb questions for years without being, they can pat me on the head as long as they want. I appreciate all the people who have helped me to understand as much as I was able to understand of this exciting field. So I want to try doing some slides here. This is just kind of a random sampling of my journey through the new energy field, because I didn't always have slide film in my camera. More often than not, I had prints. So and I know you've had enough of just sitting and taking something in the dark. So I cut down on the number of slides and keep it short. But John Hutchison sent me a fax last night with his regrets. He'd love to be here, but he wasn't able to this week. I know Tom Ballone mentioned his work, and the Planetary Association of Clean Energy has a Hutchison file that you can order and find out about his work with Tom talked a bit about his earlier work, levitation of metals and disruption of metals, really, really wild stuff. And now, last winter, or the winter of 95, he had this, what he calls crystal converter. There were, I think, 3 barium titanate cylinders in it, some other kind of rare crystalline material that he got from his digging through Army surplus stores over the years, and pressure put on these crystals and various tuning. He was able to get at least several watts out. That I think I saw a reading of 6 watts out when you multiply voltage and amperage. But not being an engineer, I can't attest with my own test instruments because I'm just a journalist. But I was impressed, and other people who came to visit were impressed with the possibilities of this. I guess that kind of I don't know if that means anything. Kind of passed Harold Putoff's 1 watt challenge because it did run continuously. I mean, I didn't hang out at his place for weeks, but I trust the people who told me that it did run continuously for weeks. Going back to the beginning of when I was introduced to the new energy field, was in the early 1980s in Canada that I heard about an inventor in Penticton, British Columbia by the name of Bill Muller, and went to visit them, and he had a magnet motor generator that he felt had great promise as an over unity device. Here, he's in 1991 in Boston demonstrating met glass, an amorphous metal, which he puts to good use in his material. And the point I'm showing this slide is to remind myself that he has made an advance in materials and being able to come up with a really low-cost means of producing an amorphous metal, which cuts out the back EMF in the motors. And they got me all excited about the possibilities of magnets because Bill asked the question, okay, you've got this little magnet there holding up a 9-pound iron ball, and it continues to do work and continues to do work and doesn't deplete. So where does the energy come from that allows that magnet to continue to do work? There, Bill's associate Michael from Calgary, they're in Temecula, California in 86, and Dr. Hans Nieper from Germany is feeling the repelling force of the, I believe they're neodymiums by then, or maybe samarium cobalt. The permanent magnets were powerful, way beyond anything we'd had before, and made new inventions possible. And skipping to 1988 in Switzerland, one of the visitors I met at Muller home was Dr. Rolf Schafranke. There he's with Carmen Muller. They're listening to the simultaneous translation at the Swiss Association for Free Energy. Dr. Schafranke wrote a little book 20 years ago called Ether Technology, which was very readable. I think Tom Ballone mentioned Townsend Brown and that section of Ether Technology. So, in case you think this is just a photo album of visits to conferences and some of the people involved, I'm going to show you a slide that you've never, I'm sure you haven't seen this. I mean, you hear a lot of talk about energy from the vacuum of space, but who has seen vacuum of space? Okay, well, one more photo album type shot. In 1987, at the German Association for Gravity Field Energy, I felt this was kind of a historic photo when Stefan Marinov meets Dr. Tawari. I like that photo. And at that conference, they didn't have simultaneous translation of the exhibit signage, so it was really puzzling. I can't tell you what this is, or this, or I couldn't read German, unfortunately, and I gathered this was a Joe Newman type coil. But skipping to 1990, I believe, in California, Bruce DePalma giving a talk about his experiments with gyroscopes. And point of this is one of the more interesting research organizations has a great sense of humor. They kind of enjoy being called fringy, and so they call themselves the Borderland Sciences Research Foundation. They put on this conference, and this is where we visited Bruce DePalma's garage, and he had end machine magnetic type motor, cranking it up there. When they carried it into the conference, it was like carrying in the Ark of the Covenant, 2 bearers on each side. But it was a beautifully crafted device, the end machine DePalma had. And at that same conference, we visited one of the private researchers who was building a model of the Swiss converter that, not this model, of course, but the one they had in Switzerland did power communes, greenhouses for years, but the people at the Maternative community feel that humanity is not evolved enough spiritually to responsibly handle an abundant source of energy. And maybe we can throw out some thoughts about that when we have a free-for-all discussion after. Dr. Alvin Marks in Massachusetts. Now, this isn't exactly space energy, but it is revolutionary. He's been working for years on a leap forward in solar photovoltaics, not just an incremental improvement on what we have now, which is too expensive to be practical, but rather let's get into a totally new approach. And he came up with a way to mimic photosynthesis. He has 2 products. One is a flexible film he calls Lumaloid, which will be really cheap to manufacture. And the other is a solid nanotechnology etching of microscopic antenna on glass that the military, or the CIA, is interested in powering satellites with his Lepcon. They put some money into the R&D, and he's had Oregon National Labs and Texas A&M also involved in helping to develop these 2 products. And just last week he told me that he'd just made a breakthrough in getting the Lumanoid to work. So that's really good news. It will bring solar photovoltaics into really affordable price range. He said, no, it's too soon to project exactly what it might cost, but it certainly will be at least 5 times cheaper than anything they have now. He had volunteers. He's the only inventor I know that made $1 million in his inventions. This is about 50 years ago. He started really breakthroughs like finding an inexpensive way to use the knowledge of polarizing light. So we can thank him for the Polaroid glasses and 3D glasses and that sort of thing. So he had those volunteers. That was Donald in the last slide, and Barry's working on his research for his products. If you heard Pierre Sinclair's talk, you'll recognize this man, David Hamill from Ontario, and Pierre and I he did the research and I did the writing on the book, The Granite Man and the Butterfly, about David Hamill's story. I had the chance to visit David in Ontario in '93 and took me on this workshop. But you've got to get the picture from Pierre of really how this technology works, and some of David's drawings. And on that same trip, I visited the son of the Canadian researcher Wilbert Smith in Ottawa, and this is Jim Smith. He's a school principal. He's holding a copy of the binding force meter that his father developed. I won't go into that whole story here because it's an appendix to the book, The Granite Man and the Butterfly, but you can also get a book called The New Science by Wilbert Smith from the Planetary Association for Clean Energy. So many years ago, decades ago, the beginnings of what we have now, there were heroes back then that we don't always acknowledge. And there are many publications in our field now, joined today, of course, by the Academy of New Energy newsletter, that I just spread out some on the floor. It goes back to Energy Unlimited over on the left side. In the middle was published in the mid-1970s. And then other publications, like on the top there you see Tom Bearden's photo on Magnets magazine. There was a magazine called Magnets in Your Future, Borderlands, and other interesting publications. Okay, Viktor Schauberger. I go into the story of Viktor Schauberger more in the book. Basically, he was an Austrian who taught us a lot about working with nature instead of against nature. He talked a lot about the fact that today's technologies are using the principle of explosion. We break things up and tear them apart, whereas nature has two motions, explosion and implosion. Explosion is what nature uses for breaking down and decaying and getting rid of substances, but nature also uses the implosive motion in a creative process. And Schauberger said that we could use that motion in our technologies, and instead of entropy, we can have increasing order. Water was very important in Schauberger's study, and I'm of course not giving really due justice to the story just in this brief remarks. This was at that Borderland conference, and Dr. Carl Merritt was going to inject some ink into this to show the Vortexian movement, which Schauberger talked about a lot. Maury King explains this all a lot better in his books. But it's something that really resonates with me, the science in harmony with nature. William Baumgartner, this is his fish motor taken apart. And if you read the book Living Water by Olaf Alexanderson, you'll get more of an understanding about the principles that Schauberger worked with that inspired people today, like William Baumgartner. And there's another book out now, Living Energies by Callum Coates of England. I think it's Turnstone Press or something like that. I haven't gotten that yet, but I'm looking forward to that book about Schauberger and William Baumgartner again. I guess William is in Australia now consulting. Last I heard, here he is in his lab in New Mexico. He was building his version of Schauberger technology. And this, I don't know if very many of you have heard of Johann Grander from Austria. How many have heard of Johann Grander? You? Some people in Europe are calling him the Schauberger for our times. Could I have the lights on now, please? I'm just going to turn to part of a chapter from the Coming Energy Revolution where I talk about Grander because, like Schauberger, he found that water was the key to unlocking the door to nature's secrets. And Grander also called his discovery living water. Grander took his water from a deep spring in a mine that he owns just by I won't go into the story of how he happened to own a mine, but it's a very, very deep spring where you can get water that he says is energized by magnetic vibrations, and it's not contaminated like the rest of the water on the surface of the planet. It's not contaminated with tritium at all. There's a book that came out in Europe, but it's also in English. I hope that perhaps Earth Pulse Press, on the track of Water's Secrets by Hans Kronberger and I can't pronounce it, Sigbert Lotache. Anyway, before I gave the talk, I was handed a note that Dan Stewart, whose telephone number is 306-789-2928, can help you order that book on the track of The Secret of Water if you want. His email is dstewart@eagle.wbm.ca. Right? And we're not just talking about water here because Gronder had a magnetic motor too. His living water technology evolved along with his magnetic motor, which he developed over a period of decades. The motor requires neither a battery nor an electric outlet. Inert magnets are covered with special alloys and arranged in such a way that they, as he describes it, continually excite each other to higher and higher frequencies. Gronder says, in this way, the natural magnetism of the magnets is intensified so much that energy begins to flow. He says this is cosmic energy, natural vital forces, the strongest of which you can touch without getting an electric shock. He, and I'm sure you've heard this before, the other inventors like Sparky Sweet claims that his motor creates a new type of electricity. Now there's several people I know who visited him, or actually associates. He's not taking visitors anymore, but who had seen a photo of the motor before it was taken apart and put away. Somebody sitting in a tub of water, and a hairdryer was plugged into the motor and thrown into the water, and you see the water spraying up. And the point is that he says there's no need to worry about dangers of shock with this type of electricity. They have the wires running along the floor with the puddles of water, and I don't know if they're just taking chances or if it's. But I like this quote from Gronder because he's an even more of an formally, as far as formal education goes, even more unschooled than Schauberger. And Gronder says, "School's like a lawnmower, making everything equal."
Oh, that's true.
So he's thankful that he had to leave school early and support his 7 siblings, or his thinking would have conformed and he wouldn't have become an inventor. He seems to have gotten his inventions from his visions. When he was working on his motor and nothing worked, he'd just go up, sit in the balcony in the sun, and then hear an inner voice telling him to go down and try it another way. One of his associates likened it to the story of Brahms, Johannes Brahms, when asked how he created his famous compositions. Brahms said that when he was in harmony with the music, when he was in harmony with nature, rather, the music would just flow, and not step by step, but just all at once. It would come to him. I've heard similar experiences from some of the other inventors. This is part of the field that keeps me excited, is the stories of how some of the inventors get their inspiration and how they get their help, too. Remember Dr. Tawari telling me that when he needed a particular answer, particular problem, didn't have time to search through a whole library, walked into a big library and reached up on a shelf, took a book down, opened it up, and there was the right answer. I think, Alice Linsky, you've mentioned that sort of thing happens to you too, right? So there are indications that we're getting a lot of help in this field. Gronder applied for a patent, and then he said he was brutally shaken out of his dream. He was feeling joy at having come up with something that helped humanity, but then he received an official notice which said, and I quote, Inventions which are detrimental to products in existence may not be granted a patent. That was the Austrian Patent Office. And Grandeur says that my request for a patent had been turned down with the official statement that, quote, this decision is adopted solely for the protection of the economy. But that didn't stop Grandeur. He kept on through years of extensive research into what he called natural and vital forces, healthy and inexhaustible sources from which our lives are forever surging. So, unfortunately, this isn't someone that you can go and see and ask to see the motor, because he dismantled it. He was receiving too many visitors, and this kept him from staying in tune as he wanted to, keeping on with his work. And he received offers, he said millions of marks from the German multinational Siemens, and someone came along at one point with a briefcase full of money, but he wasn't interested in lucrative offers from other countries. His fear, kind of like the Swiss people, he said, fearing that his revolutionary invention would either fall into the wrong hands. He said military interests have been allowed to take over the most powerful technologies of the 20th century, or his other fear was that it would be tossed into a filing cabinet and suppressed. Well, his associates tell me that when his inner guidance tells him the time is right, so that the peoples of the world can benefit from the technology, then he will release it. Down to the more maybe an engineering level that you can relate to more, he's helping to cut down on the fossil fuel used in at least one country. One of his associates, working from Hong Kong, convinced railroad officials in China to test a Grandeur invention called EcoCat, that's ECO-KAT, that uses what he calls concentrated magnetic energy. You might think that this is a version of the magnetic fuel savers, but they have, I've seen the papers attesting to the efficacy of this. The China Railroad Corporation, one of the largest rail networks in the world, uses more than 2 million tons of fuel a year, 40% of all the diesel fuel consumed in China. And in order to reduce both their fuel bill and the black diesel smoke, the railroad had spent 10 years testing magnetic devices and other fuel-saving measures. Nothing impressed the railroad until EcoCat. So the head of the engine research department that wrote a report I saw said that Grandeur's liquid fuel treatment reduced emissions, cut fuel usage, and increased horsepower. I have the figures on that there. I believe I have it in the book. Okay, I'd like to have us get a discussion going about the topic, the coming energy revolution, and the implications of free energy. And I hope that some of you who have some thoughts on the topic will be willing to come up to the microphone. Just to kind of prime the pump, I again look at my manuscript and just think of some of the possibilities of what a free energy world would look like. Of course, instead of fighting oil wars or financially supporting nuclear power plants, governments would convert these plants to run on non-polluting energy technologies and carry out large-scale cleanup projects. There's the question of whether most of the power would be generated from privately owned devices in backyards, or whether utility companies would continue to have a centralized form of power. Heard arguments on both sides. The utility companies do have a network in place for distribution and reliability of distribution, and also when it comes to home power, electricity for the home, that is. I don't think anybody would argue that a cold fusion cell, even if it's in a backyard installation, would have any problem supplying heat to a home. But the question some people have raised is whether the Environmental Protection Association agency or Atomic Energy Commission would become involved if people were putting cold fusion reactors in their homes. Jeane Manning, of course, covers that subject thoroughly, but if anybody else has any more thoughts along those lines, glad to hear it. I like the vision of oceans, rivers, and forests freed from further pollution. I like the vision of being able to go out along the freeway. I mean, if we go out and go for a walk along the freeway right now, we're asking for emphysema. The air is so foul that you don't even want to roll down your window when you're idling in a traffic jam. But imagine being able to go jogging along those areas where freeways are, or maybe have been dismantled for personal flyer transportation. Imagining being able to take a deep breath when you're walking around downtown in the largest city, and fresh breezes blowing down through the skyscrapers downtown. Will we have a increasingly healthy population, kind of to make up for the offenses, the chemical and toxic pollution in our environment now? Will we be able to clean up our rivers with abundant electricity? Well, what will it look like? And the soil can be cleaned up as we have fewer pollutants spewing out of the smokestacks. We, again, can have an increased vitality, personal health-wise, by being able to eat food that's grown on soil that's not contaminated with heavy metals. Will we have jet aircraft flying on water that somehow breaks up the existing chemical oxides that now contaminate the air? I think it's those are the positives. Constructive jobs emerging from a changeover. Are you ready for kind of a free-for-all, people giving some ideas on how you see the coming energy revolution? How? Would you come up and give some thoughts? I can't think of anybody better to start the thought.
Just a quick visualization of the cosmic all. In the next few years, we're going to see three types of energy become installed in our energy systems, and these will be cold fusion for thermal, solid-state devices for electricity to electricity, and magnetic motors, what we call supermagnet supermotors. In talking with Ken Shoulders, he had a very interesting observation of the future. First of all, I'm not willing that my children or my grandchildren have less opportunity to have an energy abundance than I had, coming from the farm and then gradually getting more and more of an energy abundance. So Ken Shoulders said, recognizes that's going to be good, but what will be the future like? Our children, our grandchildren are going to have so much energy-rich livelihood that the big problem and what they will tax will be thermal pollution. So we'll be taxed for getting rid of the excess heat that we produce. Now that's not too bad of a job. Take a de-water dish, a vacuum type dish on a July night, put it out on a hot summer night, aim it at the sky filled with water, and you'll have ice in the morning, even on a hot July night. So we have ways by which we can radiate the energy away. So thermal pollution isn't going to be a real problem. But I think we're going to have a wonderful new energy, and it's you young bucks going to have to take care of it. You young people like Jeane have to take care of this, because us old duffers have to die off and leave it in your hands.
Thanks, Hal. Hal, when is your book coming out? Excuse me, Hal, when is the Space Energy Impact coming out? When is your book, The Space Energy Impact, coming out?
Shoulders allows me to write just a little bit more about what he's doing. It's all ready to go, but I wanted to bring out some of the latest work that Ken's doing. If I don't get it out pretty quick, it's going to be history rather than any kind of a forecast of the future.
Right.
Hopefully mid-year.
How much time do we have? 10 minutes. Okay, Gary. Can you make it short?
I'm Gary Hutchison. Some of you may have seen this copy of my advanced electric vehicle concept as the car corner is. I have thought for quite a while what the implications are of this wonderful car, which I want to have for myself, by the way. There's a couple of implications. One is what are we going to do to replace the gas tax? I think it's going to be more difficult to get money for it. Go for it. Second, in my advance, and that's a beautiful concept, product is an 24 hours a day, 7 days a week time of control. It's a hot day, it's really cool. And it can visualize a whole parking lot of cars on a great day putting out heat. What is that going to do? And probably the most serious reservation I have of it is today there are constraints on people traveling around. With the supercar, people are going to be doing a lot more traveling. And we already have an awful lot of pressure on our recreation resources. What are we going to do? Yosemite and all the other places can only take so many people.
Thank you, Gary.
Having attended this conference here even before it started since Wednesday, I've been really picking up on a lot of things, but one of the most pressing things I think we might all really deeply consider and actually begin the process of writing down and lobbying in terms of political and business world is the problem of how to address the change in the infrastructure that is built upon our industrial, which is now, of course, dinosaur-like system, which involves many, many hundreds of moving parts in the internal combustion engine, for instance. This infrastructure contains many, many thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of people here in this country, in Europe, and Japan, and many other nations that make their living on repairing broken down industrial dinosaurs. How are we going to quickly retrain these folks, get them up to speed, and think in this paradigm-shifting way, whereby they literally have to change from the mechanistic viewpoint rather rapidly, given the environmental issues. And so, for instance, there's in Los Angeles, where we live, of course, the electric vehicle, which virtually has no moving parts. It's going to be very revolutionary. Just that, and that doesn't even get fully closely to what we're dealing with. So let's consider how we can retrain a lot of these folks. And I think this whole process, which we began several years ago nationwide, to retrain people from the military industrial, fighting the good fight against the Soviet Union, which of course has collapsed, and moving them into a more peacetime economy. Now we have to also continue that process further. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Henry, you next. And how can we get these out into the public forum or get our leaders, political leaders, bring it into political campaigns, bring it into academic think tanks? I think these questions have to be addressed in larger forums, even in this wonderful audience.
Well, my vision of the future is a rather simple one. It's one where we have our personal conveyances, like our automobiles, not only powered by free energy, but an interesting common side effect of that is levitation. So I see these automobiles without wheels floating around from here to there. This will mean that we can dig up all the asphalt and concrete highways, tear down all the power lines, and where these things were, we can plant flowers.
Thank you, Henry.
I think we live in a world of scarcity. There's a lot of fear around, and the change in consciousness that's needed in the world today is about putting away fear. And I think you all know what the opposite of fear is, and that's love. Now, we just need to get these machines out. We just need to do it. If we demonstrate by getting these machines on the market, out there, individually, get products on the market, everything will change. I think the one difference between the product of a free energy device and any other device we're going to see on the market is a free energy device is a manifestation, a demonstration of the abundance of God, to put it bluntly. It's something for nothing. It's what the stuff of the universe is made of. And if we can get that concept across, and if we can get products out there, some people, not everybody, some people are going to look at that machine and say, there's something for nothing. And that might trigger a little bit of shift in their consciousness, a little bit of an understanding that we don't live in a world of scarcity. We do live in a world of abundance. And it's about time, as long as we understand that, we can have everything we want, and we're all billionaires if only we knew it.
Thank you, Mike. I guess we've run out of time, but Mike led right into the way how I wanted to end this. The story, Marcel Vogel gave a talk in the Planetary Association for Clean Energy 88 meeting, and people were talking about rather fearsome forces. We've got amazing fearsome forces if we want to think in that fear mode, if we think about the economic power of those that hold it at the moment. But don't underestimate, thank you, Martin, don't underestimate what we have going for us. Anyway, Marcel Vogel, a scientist whom I highly respect, and he was speaking to a crowd of really hardcore engineers. Somebody asked him, what is the strongest force in the universe? And Marcel Vogel said, LOVE. And I want to end on the note that this new energy scene needs all the love that we can give it. Thank you.